6 months after the rescue of Minho Kim, the galaxy was a different place. The smoking ruins of the Vorthak homeworld served as a monument to a simple truth. Human children were untouchable. What had started as one family's tragedy had become the foundation of a new galactic order. On the human colony world of New Sol, the Galactic Council was meeting in emergency session. Representatives from hundreds of species had gathered to formally acknowledge what everyone already understood. Ambassador Taehyun Kim stood at the central podium, looking out at an assembly of aliens who now viewed humanity with a mixture of respect and fear. Honored delegates, Taehyun began, his voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber. We gather today to establish new protocols that will prevent future tragedies. The document before you has been prepared based on recent events in Vorthak space. The document was simple and direct. The Universal Accords for the Protection of Human Children. It stated in clear language that any action taken against human minors would be considered an act of war against all of humanity, punishable by complete military response. The Kelleran representative, his blue skin pale with nervousness, raised a tentacle. Ambassador Kim, the language seems absolute. Surely there could be circumstances where, no, Taehyun cut him off firmly. There are no circumstances, no exceptions, no special cases. Any species that harms, threatens, abducts, or endangers human children will face extinction. This is non-negotiable. The chamber fell silent. Every alien present had seen the intelligence reports from Vorthak space. An entire civilization wiped out in less than a week, all because they took one 8-year-old boy. One by one, the alien representatives signed the accords. Not because they wanted to, but because they understood the alternative. Within hours, the protection of human children had become galactic law. Meanwhile, on the research station where it all began, life had returned to something resembling normal. Dr. Jiwoo Kim was back to her scientific work, studying alien plant samples in her laboratory. But she was not the same gentle researcher she had been before. There was steel in her spine now, a hardness in her eyes that reminded everyone who saw her what she was capable of when threatened. 8-year-old Minho played in the station's recreation area, seemingly unaffected by his ordeal. He built spaceships from construction blocks and played games with the other children of station personnel. But sometimes late at night, Jiwoo would hear him crying in his sleep, calling for his mother. Those moments reminded her why what had happened to the Vorthak was necessary. Dr. Kim, Security Chief Jemin Park appeared in her lab doorway. There's someone here to see you. Admiral Do-Hyun Choi entered the lab, no longer wearing his military uniform, but dressed in civilian clothes. He looked tired, older than when she had first met him during the crisis. Admiral, Jiwoo said, standing to greet him. What brings you all the way out here? I wanted to check on Minho, Do-Hyun replied, and to deliver some news personally. He sat down heavily in a chair across from her desk. The last Vorthak survivors have been located, about 3,000 individuals scattered across 12 different refugee camps. The question is what to do with them. Jiwoo was quiet for a long moment, considering. What do you recommend? They're broken, Do-Hyun said simply. Their government is gone, their military destroyed, their homeworld uninhabitable. They pose no threat to anyone now. But they're still alive, Jiwoo observed. Yes. The question is whether we let them stay that way. Jiwoo looked out the window, at the stars, thinking about her son playing in the next room, safe and happy. Let them live, she said finally. But make sure they remember why they're alive. Make sure their children know the story of what happened when their people took a human child. Do-Hyun nodded. They'll be monitored permanently. Any sign of aggression, any hint of a threat to human interests, and they'll be eliminated. But they can live with that knowledge. He stood to leave, then paused. Jiwoo, you know that what we did, it wasn't just about your son. I know, she replied. It was about every human child who will never be kidnapped because the galaxy is afraid of what we'll do to them. After the Admiral left, Jiwoo returned to her work. but her mind kept wandering to the wider implications of what had happened. The human response to Minho's kidnapping had been so overwhelming, so disproportionate by the standards of other species, that it had fundamentally changed how the galaxy viewed humanity. On Earth, in the halls of human government, politicians and military leaders were still processing the aftermath. Fleet Admiral Sunho Martinez, the man who had destroyed the Zephyrian Empire decades earlier, had come out of retirement to oversee the final phases of Vorthak elimination. "Mr. President," he reported to the Human Council, "Operation Child Shield is complete. Vorthak military capacity has been reduced to 0. Their civilization no longer exists as a functional entity." President Chen nodded grimly. "Casualties? On our side? Minimal. 12 Marines wounded during the rescue operation, no fatalities." The president looked around the council chamber at his advisors. "And the galactic response?" "Total compliance with the new accords," came the reply from the Secretary of Alien Affairs. "Every major species has signed on. Trade agreements with human worlds are actually increasing as governments try to demonstrate their peaceful intentions toward us." What they didn't say, but everyone in the room understood, was that the galaxy was now afraid of humanity in a way it had never been before. The gentle, diplomatic species that preferred negotiation to warfare had revealed its true nature when its children were threatened. Back on the research station, Minho was having dinner with his mother and asking questions with the endless curiosity of an 8-year-old. "Mom," he said between bites of his food, "why do people look at me funny now?" Jiwoo paused, choosing her words carefully. "What do you mean, sweetheart?" "When we went to the station market, everyone kept staring at me. And that alien trader, the one with the tentacles, he looked scared when he saw me." Jiwoo sighed. "How do you explain to a child that his kidnapping had resulted in the extinction of an entire species? Sometimes when bad things happen to one person, it teaches everyone else to be more careful," she said finally. "Your adventure taught a lot of people that they need to be extra nice to human children." Minho seemed to accept this explanation and went back to eating, but Jiwoo knew that someday when he was older, she would have to tell him the full truth about what his rescue had cost. Across the galaxy, the effects of the Vorthak extinction continued to ripple outward. Pirate groups that had previously targeted human settlements began avoiding them entirely. Criminal organizations removed human children from their potential victim lists. Even the most aggressive warrior species made sure their young soldiers understood the absolute prohibition against harming human minors. The message was clear and undeniable. Humanity's love for their children was both their greatest strength and their most terrifying weapon. In the ruins of the Vorthak homeworld, automated human monitoring stations watched over the empty cities and contaminated lands. They would remain there for centuries, a permanent reminder of what happened when someone made the mistake of threatening human children. On the memorial wall of each station, the same message was inscribed in hundreds of languages. "Here lies the Vorthak civilization, destroyed for the crime of harming human children. Let all who see this remember, some lines must never be crossed." As the months passed, the story of Minho Kim's rescue became legend throughout the galaxy. Parents of all species told their children about the human response to the kidnapping, using it as a teaching tool about consequences and the power of love. But for the humans themselves, it was never just a story. It was a promise and a warning combined. "Touch our children, and we will end you." Dr. Jiwoo Kim continued her research on the remote station, her son growing up surrounded by the most powerful defensive fleet in the galaxy. Every human child in known space was now protected by the knowledge that their species would burn entire civilizations to keep them safe. And in the quiet moments before sleep, when Minho would ask his mother to tell him a bedtime story, she would sometimes tell him about brave space explorers who traveled to distant worlds. But she never told him about the aliens who learned too late that human children were the most protected beings in the universe. The new galactic order was built on a simple foundation: the understanding that humanity's protective instincts knew no bounds. It was a peace enforced not by treaties or diplomacy, but by the absolute certainty that threatening human children meant facing the full fury of the most dangerous species in the galaxy. And across the stars, in 1,000 different languages, the lesson was whispered from parent to child. Never harm the human young, for they are watched over by a species that loves so deeply, it will destroy worlds to keep them safe. The rescue of one 8-year-old boy had changed the galaxy forever, and humanity made sure that everyone remembered the lesson. Some things are worth any price to protect. The assault began with devastating precision. Human Marines launched from their ships in heavily armored shuttles, racing toward the Vorthak raider vessel hiding in the asteroid field. Colonel Hyunwoo Song led the primary assault team, his face grim behind his combat helmet. "All teams, this is Colonel Song," he spoke into his communicator. "Remember, the package is our priority. Everything else is secondary." The shuttles hit the Vorthak ship from 3 different angles simultaneously. Breach charges exploded through the hull, creating gaping holes in the ship's armor. The Marines poured through like a tide of vengeance, their advanced weapons cutting through Vorthak defenses. Inside the ship, Commander Grixtal was shouting orders to his panicked crew. The human attack was unlike anything he had experienced. These weren't soldiers coming to negotiate or capture prisoners. These were parents coming to take their child home, and they didn't care what they had to destroy to do it. "Seal the corridor. To the cargo hold," Grixtal ordered. "Use the child as leverage." But when his soldiers reached the cargo area, they found something that made their blood run cold. The cage was empty, its bars bent just enough for a small body to squeeze through. "The human child has escaped," one soldier reported over the communication system. Grixtal felt his heart sink. Without the boy as a hostage, they had nothing to bargain with. The human Marines would kill them all without mercy. Meanwhile, 8-year-old Minho had found the perfect hiding place, a maintenance shaft that led to the ship's engineering section. He had crawled through the narrow passage following the sound of humming machinery. His mother had always taught him that when scared, he should find somewhere safe and wait for help to come. The sounds of fighting grew closer as the human Marines advanced through the ship. Sergeant Soo-young Park led her squad through the main corridor, her weapon ready. She was a mother of 2 young children, and the thought of them being kidnapped like Minho made her fight with cold fury. "Contact front," one of her Marines called out as Vorthak soldiers opened fire from a defensive position. The firefight was brief and brutal. Human military training and equipment were superior. But more than that, the Marines were fighting for something the Vorthak couldn't understand: the sacred duty to protect children. Colonel Hyunwoo reached the cargo hold first, kicking down the door with his armored boot. When he saw the empty cage, his heart skipped a beat. Had they killed the boy? Had he escaped? "Package is not in the holding area," he reported to Admiral Do-hyun. "Repeat, package is not at expected location." On the flagship, Do-hyun felt ice in his veins. If the child was dead, there would be no mercy for anyone. The Vorthak species would be extinct within the month. "Find him," Do-hyun ordered. "Tear that ship apart if you have to." But Minho was already making his own escape plan. From his hiding spot in the engineering section, he had heard the fighting getting closer. He had also heard voices speaking in his own language. Humans had come to save him, just like his mother always said they would. The 8-year-old boy gathered his courage and called out, "Hello, I'm here. I'm Minho Kim." Sergeant Soo-young heard the small voice over her helmet communicator and felt her heart leap with relief. She followed the sound to a maintenance panel near the ship's power core. "Minho?" she called softly. "My name is Sergeant Park. I'm here to take you home, to your mommy." A small face appeared at the opening of the maintenance shaft, tear-stained but alive and unhurt. Minho looked at the armored soldier and saw kindness in her eyes. "Are you really here to save me?" he asked in a small voice. "Yes, sweetheart," Soo-young replied, pulling off her helmet so he could see her face clearly. "Your mom sent us to bring you home." She helped the boy out of the shaft, checking him quickly for injuries. He was scared and dirty, but appeared unharmed. "All units. This is Sergeant Park," she announced over the communication system. "I have the package. He's alive and well." The relief in Colonel Hyunwoo's voice was obvious. "Outstanding, Sergeant. Get him to the extraction point." But as they moved toward the exit, Commander Grixtal appeared at the end of the corridor with 2 of his remaining soldiers. He was holding an energy weapon, and his reptilian face was twisted with desperate anger. "Stop right there," he shouted. "Give me the child or I'll kill you all." Minho looked up at Sergeant Su-young with frightened eyes. She gently pushed him behind her and raised her weapon. "Commander," she said calmly, "you have 2 choices. Step aside and let us pass, or find out why you should never threaten human children." Grixtal hesitated. Something in the human female's voice warned him that she was not bluffing, but desperation made him stupid. "I'll shoot the boy," he threatened, trying to aim around the sergeant. That was his last mistake. Su-young moved with deadly precision, her training and maternal instincts combining into perfect lethality. 2 shots, perfectly placed. Grixtal and his soldiers dropped to the deck, their weapons falling silent. "Nobody threatens the children," she said quietly, then turned to Minho with a gentle smile. "Come on, sweetheart. Let's go home." 20 minutes later, the extraction was complete. Minho was safely aboard a human medical shuttle, being examined by doctors and speaking with his mother over video communication. "Mommy," he cried when he saw Dr. Jiwoo's face on the screen. "The soldiers came just like you said they would." Jiwoo was crying with relief, but her tears were mixed with something else, a cold satisfaction that justice was being done. "I love you, baby," she told her son. "You're safe now and you're coming home." But the rescue of Minho didn't end the human assault. If anything, it intensified it. Now that their child was safe, the humans could focus on the second part of their mission, making sure this never happened again. Admiral Do-hyun received confirmation of the successful rescue while his fleet was approaching the Vorthak homeworld. The planet's orbital defenses had already been destroyed, and the population was hiding in underground shelters. "Sir," Captain Young-ho reported, "the package has been recovered safely. All Marine units have returned to their ships." Do-hyun nodded, but his expression remained cold. "Signal all ships. Begin planetary bombardment." "Sir?" Young-ho looked confused. "We have the boy back. Mission accomplished." "No, Captain," Do-hyun replied. "The mission was never just about rescuing one child. It was about making sure no one ever tries this again." He activated the fleet communication system and addressed all ships. "All units, this is Admiral Choi. The package has been recovered safely. However, our mission is not complete. The Vorthak species has demonstrated that they consider human children acceptable targets. This cannot be tolerated." The bombardment of the Vorthak homeworld began 30 minutes later. It was methodical, precise, and completely devastating. Military installations, government buildings, spaceports, and industrial centers were destroyed, one by one. The human weapons didn't target civilian shelters directly, but the message was clear. Vorthak civilization was ending. Their ability to threaten anyone, especially human children, was being permanently eliminated. Across the galaxy, other alien species watched in horrified fascination. The humans had rescued their child, but they weren't stopping there. They were making an example that would be remembered for generations. On the Galactic Council station, Ambassador Tae-hyun Kim was fielding desperate calls from various alien governments asking if humanity would accept Vorthak surrender. "The time for surrender was before they took our child," he replied to each inquiry. "Now there are consequences to pay." Within 72 hours, it was over. The Vorthak homeworld was a smoking ruin, their fleet was completely destroyed, and their colonies had been evacuated and then bombed into rubble. The few survivors were scattered across the galaxy as refugees, their civilization extinct. But the humans weren't celebrating victory. They were focused on reunion. At the research station where it all began, Dr. Jiwoo Kim held her son in her arms for the first time in 2 weeks. Minho clung to his mother, finally safe and sound. Security Chief Jaemin Park watched the reunion with tears in his eyes. "I'm sorry we couldn't stop them from taking you," Jaemin said to Jiwoo. She looked at him and he saw that the gentle scientist was still changed by what had happened. Her voice was calm but carried an edge of steel. "It's not your fault, Jamin, and it's been taken care of. The people who hurt my son, who scared him and made him cry, they learned that actions have consequences." Admiral Do-hyun visited the station personally to check on Minho and deliver an official report to his mother. When he saw the boy playing with toy spaceships, healthy and happy, he felt a weight lift from his shoulders. "Dr. Kim," he said to Jiwoo, "I want you to know that your son's rescue was the most important mission my fleet has ever undertaken." "Thank you," she replied. "But I hope it was also the last time you'll ever need to do something like this." Do-hyun's smile was cold but satisfied. "After what we did to the Vorthak, I believe it will be. Every species in the galaxy now understands human children are off limits, forever." As the days passed and the galaxy absorbed the news of what had happened, a new understanding spread among the alien races. Humans were peaceful by choice, not by necessity. They preferred diplomacy and trade to warfare. But when their children were threatened, they became something else entirely. An unstoppable force that would burn entire civilizations too. The human fleet crossed into Vorthak space like a dark tide of vengeance. Admiral Do-hyun Choi watched from his command bridge as the first Vorthak patrol ships appeared on sensors. They were small vessels, probably just scouts, but they represented everything standing between him and the kidnapped child. "Admiral," his tactical officer reported, "enemy patrol squadron approaching. 3 ships, light armament. Destroy them," Do-hyun ordered without hesitation. The human warships opened fire, with devastating precision. The Vorthak patrol ships vanished in brilliant flashes of light, vaporized by weapons designed to crack open battleships. There were no survivors, no wreckage large enough to identify. It was a message. Nothing would be allowed to slow down the rescue mission. Across the galaxy, other alien species watched the unfolding conflict with growing fear and fascination. The humans had been peaceful neighbors for decades, preferring trade and diplomacy to warfare. But now they had transformed into something terrifying and unstoppable. On the hegemony capital world, Supreme Chancellor Krex watched intelligence, reports with growing alarm. The humans weren't just attacking military targets. They were systematically destroying everything Vorthak: trading posts, mining stations, communication relays, even civilian transports that might be carrying Vorthak passengers. "Sir," his aide reported, "our analysts believe the humans are preparing for total species extinction. This isn't a rescue mission anymore, it's genocide." Krex nodded grimly. He had seen the classified files about what happened to the Zephyrians. An entire species wiped out because they killed human children. Now the Vorthak faced the same fate for taking just one child alive. Meanwhile, on the research station where it all began, Dr. Jiwoo Kim was coordinating with the fleet through encrypted communications. She had been transformed by rage and determination, becoming someone even she didn't recognize. "Jiwoo," came Admiral Do-hyun's voice over the communicator. "We've located the ship carrying Minho. We'll have him back within 24 hours. What about the rest of them?" she asked coldly. There was a pause. "What do you mean?" "The Vorthak, all of them. What happens after you get Minho back?" Another pause, longer this time. "Jiwoo, once we have your son safe, we can discuss—" "No," she interrupted. "They took my child. They made him cry, made him scared, made him think his mother wasn't coming for him. I want them to understand that actions have consequences." The Admiral's voice was carefully neutral when he replied, "The fleet will complete its mission according to military doctrine." They both knew what that meant. Military doctrine was clear. Species that harmed human children were classified as existential threats. Existential threats were eliminated completely. In the Kornak system, Commander Grixtal was finally understanding the full scope of his mistake. His raider ship was hiding in an asteroid field, but he knew it was only a matter of time before the humans found him. His communications equipment was picking up transmissions from across Vorthak space, and the news was catastrophic. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "Fleet Command is gone. The humans destroyed the entire headquarters complex with orbital bombardment. Admiral Vexmore's ship was vaporized along with the whole command structure." Grixtal felt cold, fear in his stomach. The humans weren't just coming for the child. They were decapitating the entire Vorthak military command, making sure there would be no organized resistance. In the ship's cargo hold, little Minho sat in his cage, listening to his captors argue in their harsh language. He couldn't understand the words, but he could hear the fear in their voices. Something was happening, something that scared the scary aliens who had taken him from his mother. Minho had been working on loosening the bars of his cage whenever the guards weren't looking. He was small and flexible, and the Vorthak had built the cage for adult prisoners. If he could just get one bar loose enough. Back on the human flagship, Colonel Hyun-Woo Song was preparing his Marine strike teams for the rescue operation. These were the best soldiers humanity had produced, veterans of conflicts across the galaxy. But they had never fought with such personal investment. Listen up, Hyun-Woo addressed his assembled Marines. Intelligence says the target ship is lightly armed, maybe 30 crew members. But they've got the package right in the middle of their ship, surrounded by their quarters. One of his sergeants, Soo-Young Park, raised her hand. Sir, what if they try to use the kid as a human shield? Hyun-Woo's scarred face was stone cold. Then we show them why that's the worst mistake they could make. Every Marine in this unit has kids back home. Every one of us knows what we're fighting for. He activated a holographic display showing the Vorthak ship's layout. We go in fast and hard. Team Alpha takes the engine room, cuts their power. Team Beta secures the bridge, stops them from sending distress signals. Team Charlie, that's my team, goes straight for the package. Sergeant Soo-Young studied the tactical display. Sir, the corridor leading to the prisoner area is narrow. They could set up a choke point, use the boy as leverage. Not if they can't see us coming, Hyun-Woo replied with a cold smile. We're going in through the hull using breach charges, multiple entry points, full shock and awe. By the time they realize what's happening, it'll be over. Meanwhile, across human space, the conflict was having effects no one had anticipated. On every human world, parents were holding their children a little closer, grateful that their families were safe. The kidnapping of one boy had reminded every human parent how precious and vulnerable their children were. On the colony world of New Shanghai, 8-year-old Nari Choi was asking her mother why Daddy had to go away with his big ships. There's a little boy who needs help, her mother explained carefully. Your daddy and his friends are going to bring him home to his mommy. Is the boy scared? Nari asked. Yes, sweetheart. He's very scared, but your daddy won't let anything bad happen to him. What her mother didn't say was that Admiral Do-hyun Choi had looked at pictures of the kidnapped boy and seen his own daughter's face. Every human parent in the galaxy was making the same connection, turning one family's tragedy into a species-wide cause for war. In the Galactic Council chambers, emergency sessions were being held as the conflict escalated beyond all expectations. Representative after representative was taking the floor to distance their species from the Vorthak. Ambassador Taehyun Kim sat calmly in the human delegation section, watching alien diplomats panic as reports came in of human fleet movements. His expression was serene, but his words were ice-cold when he spoke. Honored delegates, he said when called to speak. I want to remind everyone that this situation could have been avoided very simply. All the Vorthak had to do was not kidnap human children. The Kelleran representative stood up urgently. Ambassador, Kim, surely the human response has been disproportionate. One child does not justify. One child, Taehyun interrupted, is one child too many. The human position is non-negotiable. Our children are off-limits. Period. Any species that harms them faces extinction. The chamber fell silent. Several alien representatives were looking at each other nervously, probably wondering if their own species had ever inadvertently threatened human children. Taehyun continued, his voice carrying across the stunned chamber. Let this be a lesson to everyone present. Humans are peaceful by choice, not by weakness. When you threaten what we hold most dear, we become something else entirely. Back in Vorthak space, the systematic destruction continued. Human forces weren't just hunting for the kidnapped child. They were methodically destroying every aspect of Vorthak civilization, Space stations were being vaporized, colonies were being evacuated and then bombed flat. Entire star systems were being blockaded. On the Vorthak homeworld, panic was spreading through the population. Refugees from destroyed outer colonies were flooding in with stories of human ruthlessness. The orbital defense platforms had been destroyed in the first wave of attacks, leaving the planet defenseless. Civilian leader Thokmar tried to broadcast a surrender offer to the approaching human fleet, but there was no response. The humans weren't interested in surrender. They wanted complete elimination of the threat to their children. In his hidden ship, Commander Grixtal was making one last desperate attempt to save himself and his crew. He activated the ship's communication system and tried to contact the human fleet. Human vessels, he broadcast on all frequencies. This is Commander Grixtal of the Vorthak 3rd Raider Wing. I have your child. I am willing to return him unharmed in exchange for safe passage. The response came from Admiral Do-hyun personally, his voice colder than the vacuum of space. Commander Grixtal, you had your chance to return our child safely. That time has passed. You will surrender the boy immediately and unconditionally, or you will be destroyed. You have 10 minutes to comply. Grixtal tried again, desperation creeping into his voice. Admiral, surely we can negotiate. I never intended to harm the child. This was just a misunderstanding. 9 minutes. Do-hyun's voice cut him off. In Biar-yom, the cargo hold, Minho had finally managed to work one of the cage bars loose enough to squeeze through. He was a small boy, and fear had made him even more determined. As the adults argued above him, he slipped out of his prison and began looking for somewhere to hide. He had learned enough about ships from visiting his mother's station. Fleet Admiral Do-hyun Choi stood on the bridge of his flagship, the massive warship Retribution. Around him, the largest human fleet ever assembled was moving through space like a storm cloud. 63 warships, from small destroyers to enormous battleships, all heading toward Vorthak territory with one purpose: bring home a little boy named Minho. Do-hyun looked at the picture on his personal display screen. It showed his own daughter Nari, 8 years old with bright eyes and a happy smile. She looked so much like the kidnapped boy that it made his heart ache. Every time he thought about Minho scared and alone on an alien ship, he saw Nari's face. Admiral, his aide Captain Young-ho Lee reported, all fleet units are in position. We'll reach Vorthak outer territory in 18 hours. Good, Do-hyun replied, his voice cold as space. Signal all ships. When we cross that border, we are at war. No warnings, no negotiations. Anything that moves and isn't the boy gets destroyed. On the surface, this looked like a rescue mission. But everyone in the fleet knew better. This was about sending a message that would echo across the galaxy for generations. Touch human children, and humanity will end you. In the Marine section of the ship, Colonel Hyunwoo Song was briefing his soldiers. These were not ordinary Marines. They were the best of the best, veterans of a dozen conflicts, trained for the most dangerous missions. But they had never looked as serious as they did today. Listen up, Hyunwoo said, his scarred face grim. Our mission is simple. We get the boy back alive. Everything else burns. Every Vorthak ship, every station, every planet that stands in our way gets turned to ash. The Marines nodded. These were hardened soldiers who had seen terrible things, but they all understood what was at stake. Not just one child, but the safety of every human child in the galaxy. Sir, one Marine asked, what if they try to use the kid as a shield? Hyunwoo's smile was not pleasant. Then we show them why that's a very bad idea. Human military doctrine is clear. When our children are threatened, there are no rules. Meanwhile, across human space, something unprecedented was happening. The call had gone out through official channels and unofficial networks alike. The Vorthak had taken a human child. Within hours, the response was overwhelming. Retired Admiral Sunho Martinez, the man who had destroyed the Zephyrian Empire, came out of retirement and requested a command. Veterans who hadn't served in decades were volunteering for active duty. Even civilian ship captains were offering their vessels for support roles. On the human colony world of New Seoul, Diplomat Tae-hyun Kim was making the most important presentation of his life. He stood before the Galactic Council, the governing body that tried to keep peace between different alien species. The council chamber was packed with representatives from dozens of worlds. Honored delegates, Tae-hyun began, his voice calm but carrying an undertone of menace. I come before you today to make a simple announcement. The Vorthak have committed an act of war against humanity by kidnapping one of our children. The alien delegates shifted nervously. They had heard rumors about what humans did when their young were threatened. Therefore, Tae-hyun continued, any species that aids the Vorthak in any way will be considered an enemy of humanity. Any species that trades with them, refuels their ships, or provides them sanctuary will face the full military might of human space. The Kelleran representative, a tall blue-skinned alien, spoke up. Ambassador Kim, surely you don't expect the entire galaxy to— Yes, Tae-hyun cut him off. I do. You have 48 hours to cease all contact with Vorthak territory, or join them in extinction. The bluntness of the threat sent shockwaves through the chamber. Humans were usually diplomatic, preferring negotiation to warfare. But when children were involved, they became something entirely different. Within hours of Tae-hyun's presentation, 3 major trading companies canceled all contracts with Vorthak worlds. The Melleran Confederacy closed its borders to Vorthak ships. Even the warrior culture of the Krogan Empire announced they would not interfere with human operations. Back in Vorthak space, Overlord Vexmore was watching his civilization collapse in real time. Reports flooded in from across their territory. Human ships were appearing at the borders, not attacking yet but clearly preparing for war. Worse, their usual allies and trading partners were abandoning them. Sir, his aide reported, the hegemony just expelled our ambassador. The Centauri Union has closed all trade routes to our ships. Even the pirates in the Outer Rim are refusing to deal with us. Vexmore nodded grimly. He had expected this. When humans declared war, they didn't just fight with weapons. They used their economic power, their diplomatic influence, their reputation for keeping promises. They made their enemies into outcasts. Commander Grixtol appeared on the communication screen from his raiding ship, looking desperate. My lord, he pleaded, surely we can negotiate. Offer to return the child with compensation. Show them we mean no harm. You still don't understand, Vexmore replied. Humans don't negotiate when their children are taken. They have a saying, actions have consequences. We took their child. Now we face the consequences. He brought up tactical displays, showing human fleet positions. Look at this. They're not just sending a rescue force. They're mobilizing their entire military. This isn't about saving one boy anymore. This is about making sure no one ever tries this again. On the human intelligence ship Shadowrunner, Agent Minji Lee was doing what she did best, gathering information behind enemy lines. Disguised as a Kelleran trader, she had infiltrated Vorthak space days before the fleet arrived. Her job was to map their defenses, identify their weaknesses, and most importantly, locate the kidnapped child. She had been trained for this kind of work, but she had never worked with such personal motivation. Minji had 2 children of her own, safe on Earth. Every time she thought about little Minho scared and alone, she felt rage burning in her chest. The Vorthak had made it personal for every human parent in the galaxy. Command, this is Shadowrunner, she reported over encrypted channels. I've located the raider ship carrying the package. They're in the Kornak system trying to hide in an asteroid field. Admiral Do-hyun's voice came back immediately. Confirmed, Shadowrunner. Can you verify the package is unharmed? Minji checked her sensors again. The ship's life support readings showed one small human biosignature, separate from the Vorthak. Crew, package appears to be alive and healthy, she reported. But they've got him in the center of the ship surrounded by their crew quarters. Any rescue attempt will be dangerous. Understood, Do-hyun replied. Stay on station and guide our forces in when we arrive. As Minji watched the Vorthak ship through her sensors, she saw something that made her smile coldly. The raiders were trying to contact other Vorthak vessels, but no one was responding. Even their own people were abandoning them. On the bridge of the Retribution, Admiral Do-yun was receiving reports from across the fleet. Every ship was ready, every marine was armed, every pilot was eager for the fight to begin. "Admiral," Captain Young-ho reported, "we've received final confirmation from intelligence. The target ship is in the Cornac system. Our agent has eyes on the package." Do-yun nodded, then opened fleet-wide communications. "All ships, this is Admiral Choi. In 6 hours, we cross into Vorthak space. Our mission is simple. Get the boy back. I don't care what we have to destroy to do it. I don't care how many enemy ships we have to burn. That child is going home to his mother." He paused, looking around the bridge at his officers. These were good people, professionals who had sworn to protect humanity. Today, they would show the galaxy what that oath really meant. "One more thing," Do-yun continued. "The Vorthak made this personal when they took our child. So we're going to make it personal right back. When this is over, the name Vorthak will be a warning to every species in the galaxy. This is what happens when you harm human children." Across the fleet, thousands of human servicemen and women checked their weapons, powered up their ships, and prepared for battle. They were not just fighting for one boy. They were fighting for the principle that human children were off limits forever and always. In his cage on the Vorthak raider ship, 8-year-old Min-ho Kim didn't know that the largest rescue operation in human history was coming for him. He was scared and homesick, but he was also smart. He had been listening to his captors, learning their routines, watching for opportunities. His mother had always told him to be brave and think carefully when he was scared. So even though he was just a little boy, Min-ho was planning. If the chance came to escape, he would be ready. He didn't know that his mother was coordinating with military commanders across human space. He didn't know that fleets were moving to save him. He didn't know that his kidnapping had started a war that would reshape the galaxy. All he knew was that his mom had taught him never to give up hope. And somewhere in the darkness of space, hope was coming for him with the fury of an entire species. Behind it, the hunt had begun and the humans were not coming to negotiate. Overlord Vexmore paced back and forth in his command room, his claws clicking against the metal floor. The other Vorthak officers watched him nervously, never having seen their leader so frightened. Vexmore was known across the galaxy as a cruel and fearless warrior, but now he looked like a scared animal. "Gather the War Council," he ordered his aide. "All senior commanders now." Within minutes, the command room was filled with Vorthak military leaders. They stood at attention, confused by the emergency meeting. Commander Grixtal appeared on the main screen from his raiding ship, still not understanding why everyone was so upset. "My lords," Grixtal began, "I don't understand the problem. We have captured valuable prisoners before. Why is one human child different?" Vexmore turned to face the assembled officers, his yellow eyes blazing with anger and fear. "Because you idiots know nothing about humans," he roared. "Sit down and let me educate you before we all die horrible deaths." The officers sat quickly, sensing their leader's deadly serious mood. Vexmore walked to the main display screen and brought up classified military files. 20 years ago, the Zephyrian Empire was the most powerful military force in this sector. He began. They had 1,000 warships, controlled 50 star systems, and had never lost a major battle. The officers nodded. They all remembered the mighty Zephyrian fleet. The Zephyrians decided to raid a small human colony world called New Paradise, Vexmore continued. It was supposed to be easy, just farmers and their families, no military base, no defenses. He pressed a button, and images appeared on the screen showing a peaceful planet with green fields and small towns. The Zephyrian pirates landed and started taking whatever they wanted: food, equipment, prisoners. But then something went wrong. The human colonists fought back harder than expected, and some of the pirates got angry. Vexmore's voice became quieter, more dangerous. So the pirates decided to teach the humans a lesson. They gathered all the human children in the main town square, 37 children from babies to teenagers, and they killed them all, just to show the adults what happens when you resist. The room fell silent. Even by Vorthak standards, killing children was considered extreme. The surviving humans were taken as slaves. Vexmore went on. The Zephyrians thought it was over, Just another successful raid. They had no idea what they had started. He clicked another button, and the screen showed a different image. Massive human warships moving through space like a dark cloud. 3 days later, a human fleet arrived at New Paradise. But these weren't rescue ships, they were warships, hundreds of them. More military power than anyone had ever seen humans deploy. The Vorthak officers leaned forward, fascinated despite their growing fear. The fleet was commanded by Admiral Sunho Martinez. When he saw what had happened to the children, he sent one message to the Zephyrian homeworld. Vexmore played an audio recording. A human voice, cold and emotionless, spoke in clear galactic standard. You touched our children. There will be no mercy, no negotiation, no survivors. The room was dead silent. The human's voice was more terrifying than any Vorthak war cry they had ever heard. The humans didn't just attack the pirates, Vexmore continued. They went after the entire Zephyrian Empire. Every planet, every station, every ship. It wasn't a war, it was extermination. More images flashed on the screen. Burning cities, destroyed. Fleets, empty planets. The Zephyrians tried to surrender after losing half their territory. They offered to pay massive compensation, to give up the pirates who killed the children, anything to make it stop. What did the humans say? One officer asked quietly. Nothing, Vexmore replied. They didn't even respond to surrender offers. They just kept attacking until every single Zephyrian was dead, an entire species wiped out in 6 months. Commander Grixtal's image flickered on the screen, his face now pale with understanding. But surely that was an extreme case, he said weakly. Killing children is different from just capturing one. Is it? Vexmore snapped. Here's what you don't understand about humans. They don't see their children as just small humans. 2. Them children are the most precious thing in the universe. More valuable than their own lives, more important than their entire civilization. He brought up more files on the screen, showing various human military actions. Every time someone has threatened human children, the response has been the same. Total war until the threat is completely destroyed. The Krell learned this when they took human children as hostages. The Mordecai learned it when they attacked a human school ship. The Hegemony learned it when they tried to use human children as living shields. What happened to them? Another officer asked, though he probably didn't want to know the answer. They're all extinct, Vexmore said simply. Every species that has ever harmed human children is now just a footnote in galactic history books. Back on the research station, Dr. Jiwoo Kim was making calls with calm, deadly efficiency. She had contacted her brother Taehyun, who worked as a diplomat in human space. She had called her old friend Admiral Do-hyun Choi, who commanded the 3rd Fleet. She had even sent messages to her ex-husband who served in human special forces. Jaemin watched her work, amazed by the transformation. The gentle scientist was gone, replaced by someone who spoke in military terms and seemed to know every important person in human defense forces. Taehyun, she said into her communicator. They took Minho. I need you to contact everyone you know, in Fleet Command. Her brother's voice came back immediately, cold and professional. Already on it, Jiwoo. I've sent priority messages to 15 different commanders. How long ago did this happen? 3 hours, she replied. Then there's still time. The closest battle group is only 2 days away. They're changing course now. Jaemin couldn't believe what he was hearing. An entire battle group was changing course just for one kidnapped child. Jiwoo's next call was to Admiral Do-hyun Choi. When his face appeared on the screen, Jaemin saw a man with gray hair and cold eyes, someone who had clearly seen many battles. Jiwoo, the Admiral said without greeting. I heard what happened. I'm pulling ships from the 5th and 7th Fleets. We'll have 30 warships in Vorthak space within a week. Do-hyun, Jiwoo said quietly. I know it's just one child. No. The Admiral interrupted. It's not just one child. It's the principle. If we let this slide, every pirate and raider in the galaxy will think our children are fair game. He paused, and his voice became even colder. Besides, my daughter Nari is 8 years old too. When I look at the pictures of your son, I see her face. These aliens made it personal. As the calls continued, Jamin began to understand something that chilled him to the bone. This wasn't just about rescuing Minho. The humans were preparing for war, real war, the kind that ended civilizations. Meanwhile, on the Vorthak command ship, Overlord Vexmore was still trying to explain the situation to his officers. The problem isn't just that humans love their children, he said. The problem is how they express that love. When you threaten a human child, you don't just anger the parents, you anger every human in the galaxy. But how could they all care about one strange child? Grixtel asked. Vexmore laughed bitterly. Because that's how humans think. To them, every child is their child. Every human parent looks at that kidnapped boy and sees their own son or daughter. That's why they'll drop everything to save him. HFY pulled up intelligence reports on the screen showing human fleet movements. Look at this. In the past 4 hours, 17 human battle groups have changed course toward our territory. Admiral Command has put the entire human defense force on high alert. They're pulling ships from patrol duties, defensive positions, even peaceful exploration missions. The reports kept coming in, each one more frightening than the last. Sir, an aide reported, our spies in human space say that retired military officers are volunteering to return to service. Veterans who haven't flown combat missions in decades are requesting immediate reactivation. Vexmore nodded grimly. Of course they are, because somewhere out there is a scared 8-year-old boy calling for his mother, and every human with a conscience can't sleep knowing he's in danger. Commander Grixtal finally began to understand the magnitude of what he had done. What do we do? He asked quietly. Pray, Vexmore replied. Pray that we can return the child before the human fleet arrives, because once they cross into our space, nothing will stop them except total victory or total death. As if summoned by his words, an urgent message appeared on the command screen. It was from human space, broadcast on all frequencies, so everyone in the sector could hear it. The face of Admiral Do-hyun Choi appeared, his expression carved from stone. To the Vorthak forces who have taken the human child, you have 72 hours to return him unharmed to his mother. After that time expires, we will consider your entire species an enemy of humanity. The message continued. We are not interested in negotiation. We are not interested in ransom. Return the child or face the consequences. The transmission ended, leaving the Vorthak command room in shocked silence. 72 hours, Vexmore whispered. They're not even pretending this is about rescue anymore. They're giving us time to prepare for war. And across the galaxy, human fleets were already moving, carrying with them the fury of an entire species whose most sacred rule had been broken. Never harm the children. The asteroid mining station floated quietly in space, its lights twinkling against the black void. Dr. Ji-woo Kim looked out the window of her lab, watching the distant stars while her equipment hummed softly in the background. She was studying alien plant samples, work that fascinated her but kept her away from home for months at a time. Mom, I'm sleepy, came a small voice from behind her. Ji-woo turned to see her 8-year-old son Minho rubbing his eyes. The boy had been staying with her during school break and she loved having him here, even if a research station wasn't the most exciting place for a child. Come here, little one, she said, picking him up. Let's get you to bed. She carried Minho to the small sleeping quarters they shared. The station was not large, with only 12 people living and working there. Most were scientists like herself, with just 2 security guards to keep them safe. This far from human space, nobody expected trouble. Will you tell me a story? Minho asked as she tucked him into his narrow bed. Of course, Ji-woo said, sitting beside him. She told him about brave astronauts exploring new worlds, making her voice soft and soothing. Soon Minho's breathing became deep and steady. She kissed his forehead and quietly left the room. Meanwhile, in the security office, Jamin Park was watching the sensor screens. He was the head of security, though there wasn't much to secure on a research station. Mostly he checked equipment and made sure the airlocks worked properly. Tonight seemed like any other quiet night. That changed when his screens lit up with warning signals. What the hell? Jamin muttered, leaning forward. 3 ships were approaching fast, and they weren't human designs. The hulls were dark and covered in spikes, built for war rather than exploration. His blood ran cold as he recognized the type. Vorthak, Raiders. Jamin hit the alarm button and red lights began flashing throughout the station. He grabbed his radio and started shouting warnings to everyone. All personnel, this is security. We have hostile ships incoming. Get to the safe rooms now. But it was too late. The Vorthak ships were already docking, their hull cutters burning through the station's outer walls. Jamin grabbed his weapon and ran toward the main corridor, hoping to buy the civilians time to hide. The Vorthak were reptilian creatures, 7 feet tall with thick green skin and sharp claws. They wore black armor and carried energy weapons that could burn through metal. They moved through the station like a pack of hunters searching for anything valuable. Commander Grixtal led his warriors with practiced efficiency. He had raided dozens of stations like this one, always looking for technology, rare materials, or prisoners to sell as slaves. Humans were particularly valuable because they were smart and could do complex work. Search everything, Grixtal ordered his soldiers. Take whatever looks important. Jamin tried to stop them, firing his weapon at the raiders as they moved through the corridors. But he was just one man with a small gun, while they were trained killers with military weapons. They shot back, and Jamin had to duck behind corners to avoid being burned alive. The other security guard, Kyung, tried to help from the other end of the station, but there were too many raiders. They spread out quickly, breaking into labs and living quarters. Dr. Jiwoo woke up to the sound of alarms and shooting. Her heart pounded as she realized what was happening. She had heard stories about Vorthak raiders, how they took people and were never seen again. She ran to Minho's bed but froze when she saw a tall shadow in the doorway. Please, she whispered, standing protectively in front of her sleeping son. Don't hurt him. The Vorthak soldier looked at the child, then at the woman. He could have killed them both, but children were worth more alive. He spoke into his radio, in the harsh Vorthak language. Boss, I found something interesting. A human child. Grixtal's voice crackled back. Perfect. Children bring good money. Take him. Jiwoo screamed and tried to fight as the soldier pushed her aside, but she was no match for a trained warrior. The Vorthak scooped up the still sleeping Minho and carried him away. The boy woke up as they moved through the corridor, confused and scared. Mom? Minho called out weakly, but his mother was already far behind. Jamin heard Jiwoo's screams and ran toward the sound, but more Vorthak soldiers blocked his path. He fought desperately, knowing that someone was in terrible danger, but he couldn't get through. The raiders worked quickly, taking research data, rare materials, and anything else that looked valuable. But their real prize was the human child. Commander Grixtal smiled when he saw Minho. Children this young could be trained and sold for huge amounts of money. Get everything loaded, Grixtal ordered. We leave in 5 minutes. The Vorthak soldiers gathered their stolen goods and headed back to their ships. Minho was crying now, calling for his mother, but the aliens ignored his tears. To them, he was just cargo. Jamin finally broke through and reached the sleeping quarters, where he found Jiwoo on her knees, sobbing. They took him, she said, her voice broken. They took my baby. Through the window, they could see the Vorthak ships pulling away from the station. Inside one of them, Minho was locked in a metal cage, scared and alone. Back on the Vorthak command ship, the raiders were celebrating. They had electronic equipment, research data, and a valuable human child. This had been a very successful raid. Commander, Grixtal contacted his superior, Overlord Vexmore, using the ship's communication system. The Overlord's ugly face appeared on the screen, his yellow eyes gleaming with greed. Report, Vexmore demanded. Successful raid, my lord, Grixtal said proudly. We took valuable research materials and captured a human child. The boy looks healthy and smart. He should bring an excellent price. But instead of praise, Grixtal saw something he had never seen before in his commander's eyes. Pure terror. Vexmore's face went pale, his mouth hanging open in shock. For a long moment he couldn't speak. When he finally found his voice, it was a harsh whisper. "You did what?" "We captured a human child, my lord. As you taught us, children are the most valuable." "You fool!" Vexmore screamed, cutting him off. "You stole a human child? Now we all die." Grixtal stared at the screen in confusion. His commander was shaking with fear, something he had never seen before. Vexmore was known throughout Vorthak space as a ruthless warrior who feared nothing. "I don't understand, my lord," Grixtal said. "It's just one small human, just one." Vexmore laughed, but there was no humor in it, only desperation. "You have no idea what you've done. You've signed the death warrant for our entire species." The other Vorthak on the ship looked at each other nervously. They had never seen their leaders act like this. "What was so special about human children?" Vexmore continued, his voice getting more panicked with each word. "Humans don't negotiate when you take their young. They don't ask for ransom. They don't show mercy. They come with their entire fleet and burn everything until they get their child back." Grixtal felt a cold fear creeping into his heart. "But surely one child isn't worth—" "Return the child immediately," Vexmore ordered. "Take him back to the station and pray to the dark gods that it's not too late." But as Grixtal looked at his navigation screens, he realized they were already too far from the human station. And somewhere in human space he knew that powerful people were probably already learning about what had happened. On the research station, Jiwoo had stopped crying. She sat in her destroyed lab making call after call on her communication device. Her voice was steady now, cold and determined. "This is Dr. Jiwoo Kim," she said into the device. "My son has been taken by Vorthak raiders. I need to speak with Admiral Command immediately." Jamin watched her with growing amazement. The gentle scientist he knew was gone, replaced by something harder and more dangerous. And somewhere in space, the Vorthak were about to learn why you never, ever steal a human child.